Well, again, I'm not 100% convinced that they're truly alien, but I think that they have an interest in us. I think that whatever it is that we've been interacting with throughout history, it has an interest in where we're going. My favorite UFO researcher, Dr. Jacques Vallée, he posits that the UFO system basically acts as a control system for human consciousness on this planet, and that it more or less keeps us kind of going forward, but like keeps us from getting overly scientific, but then also keeps us from getting overly belief-oriented or, for lack of a better term, religious, which I don't mean to offend anybody by that. But, so I'm really not sure. You know, I don't think anybody really knows why they're here. There's a wide variety of theories, as I'm sure you know. Seemingly, there's a lot of people who think that they're not here for our good, and that they're here perhaps feeding off of us in some sort of way, whether it's an emotional feeding. You know, very common in abduction experiences. The abductee is shown images of the Earth being destroyed, or cataclysmic events, and the kind of things that are obviously going to elicit a strong emotional reaction. And so there's some folks who have come to the conclusion that they must be inducing these experiences of fear as a way of perhaps feeding off them.
Much like evil spirits.
Well, do you believe that it has anything to do with like 2012?
Well, I'd like to think that something significant will happen towards the end of 2012 that will be on the scale of opening people's minds to a wider reality. I don't know if I really, if I think of those two things and the UFO phenomena in terms of people's ideas about 2012. The first time I ever heard about 2012 was by somebody who has described himself as a UFO contactee, and that's Terence McKenna. Terence McKenna, quite a character. He was often described as the Timothy Leary of the 90s because he was an advocate of psychedelics. But while he was in the Amazon investigating psychedelics, and while he was under the influence of psychedelics, he had a classic UFO experience, and that's Gary McKinnon, who's standing trial for being a UFO hacker. But Terence McKenna had this experience with a classic Adamski-style UFO craft in the Amazon. Now, he, at the time, believed, as most people do, that the Adamski UFO was a hoax, that it was a hoaxed series of photographs with a story of contact with benevolent space brothers. And so when he saw this, he thought, well, I know that can't be real, but it seemed to him to be absolutely real. It also, it came out of another type of UFO that is assumed to be part of the true UFO phenomena, what's called a cloud cigar. And this is an object that seems like a cloud, but is actually elongated like a cigar, and often ejects other objects that then, if seen closer, seem to be UFOs, sometimes structured craft. McKenna ended up having all this information kind of dumped into his mind, and over the years he analyzed this information that came to him, and he started looking at the Chinese I Ching, the divinatory technique that involves the throwing of the coins or the reeds and reading them, kind of like reading tea leaves. From out of that, he came up with this algorithm that's a little too complex for me to try to describe here, but basically where he looked at it, he plotted this figure along with history, and it ended up with the end date of December 21st, 22nd, 2012. Unbeknownst to him, he later would talk to people who were experts in Mayan mythology, and that's, of course, when their cycle starts anew. And so there was this conjunction with him getting this psychedelic-induced idea, this alien-induced idea. I mean, he had a lot of different ideas, including that psychedelic mushrooms were in fact extraterrestrial. And as it turns out, spores actually can survive in space, so who knows?
Fruits of the god. The gods.
But yeah, I'm not really sure. I know a lot of people do probably conflate the idea of open mass contact happening in 2012. You know, every year there's rumors that, you know, disclosure is imminent. There's already been mainstream talk in the news that there's going to be some revelation from NASA this year about Martian life, but of course it'll probably just be some, oh look, microbes, you know.
Yeah. There was some water there one time.
Okay, well, thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you. Yeah, there's supposedly, and I think it's from the Amazon, there's a hallucinogenic that they say people take, and they all have the same, whatever you want to call it, spiritual experience where they see light beings. And
Ayahuasca is probably.
That's. I think you're right. Yeah. I think that's fascinating.
That's what he was looking for, and he certainly did plenty of that, but it was psychedelic.
It was all in the name of science.
But I think if you look at again, there's a lot in the anthropological literature about shamanism that seems to indicate very clearly that these shaman, these witch doctors, these people are able to go into these visionary states and come back with wisdom and knowledge that does have practical applications. There's a number of different discoveries that have been made by people, you know, in an altered state of consciousness. And the one thing we know from parapsychological literature is that information can be transferred in ways, some channel, some sixth sense, some way that's not, you know,
collective conscience.
Yeah, I think I'm very much interested in Jungian ideas of collective unconscious. I think that's the ether through which a lot of this information transfers.
Well, there are different societies even, like, that haven't seen, and it's rare now, but there's societies that are pretty much just secluded from everyone else, and they still have a lot of the same mythology and the same kinds of experiences that we all do, being in part of this huge culture, like media-induced culture. But yeah, I mean, maybe because of the collective unconscious, or maybe it's just our brains wired that way.
And you know, the one thing with, again, every culture has tales of encounters with some others, for lack of aliens, you know, whether they ascribe them to a spirit realm or as their gods, or, you know, just some advanced beings from beyond the hills or something. There's these stories, and I think that there's kernels of truth to all of them, and I think that that's really where our modern culture fails, is in its ability to come to grips with the life of the mind, and its ability to reach out and communicate with other minds non-locally, like with remote viewing and telepathy and ESP. But at the same time, I suspect that goes beyond species communication. I think that it allows for interspecies communication.
Yeah.
We got 1 minute left, so is there anything that you wanted to say? We'll wrap it up.
The nonprofit that I'm affiliated with is the Anomaly Archives. You can see the web address there. We have thousands of books on these subjects. We have, right now, right around 2,500 books in the collection. This is UFO books, parapsychology books, ghost hunting, poltergeist books on dreaming and lucid dreaming, metaphysics, the occult, just a huge overall.
This sounds like a huge library.
We also have hundreds of books for the Austin MUFON library, the Mutual UFO Network, the local chapter. We also have over 2,000 books for the Young Society of Austin. That's the Carl Jung Society, so lots of Jungian